"O blessed Omnissiah, please revive my 6-year-old Roku so I can watch Netflix on my 15-year-old tube TV downstairs so I can watch TV while I do cardio." What's up, guys? It is Connor, and I've been reading the Word Bearers Omnibus quite a bit every day now, so I've been seeing a lot of stuff because it's also a really good book besides being a Word Bearers novel, because, Word Bearers Omnibus would sort of imply that. There's a lot of Mechanicus stuff involved, and it's so funny to me because the Word Bearers are brutal and just creepy and all this other chaos nonsense. But, let's put it past the chaos and sort of hop on the Mechanicus train real quick. Cult Mechanicus is like insanely creepy. Like Adeptus Mechanicus absolutely should be ranking higher in the creep factor than any other faction, like in general. Oh, but Connor, what about Tyranids? The only thing I find really scary about Tyranids is their bugs that just kind of have no explanation for existing, and they're just billions of bajillions of them. Yeah, existentially it could be kind of scary, but honestly, from a Xenos perspective, you can almost say the same thing about humanity. There's so much of us that it is quite horrifying to think about in a way. Oh, but Connor, what about the Drukhari? Okay, good point, except little edgelords over there, besides, the Night Lords, died edgelords, I'd like to say them. I don't think the Drukhari are necessarily creepy, or maybe I would classify them in a different sort of horror, because Drukhari, yes, I'm going to turn you into a couch, oh, scary. It is scary, but you can only do this, the torture for 1,000 moons until I'm going to turn you into a cup and drink wine from you thing. Yeah, it's kind of scary, but after a certain point you get sort of numb to it. However, I'm not the biggest fan of body horror because it kind of does give me, I get a little repulsed by it. And so, Mechanicum and the Cult Mechanicus in general do this extremely well. And when you read the book, there's Archmagos Dariok, who does his own thing, and there's a Brigadier General Havor or something, and they talk, and there's just really interesting bits of information that sort of highlight just how pragmatic and brutal the Mechanicus is when they're kind of scouring over this battlefield on a planet called Tanakreg or Krieg, but they're going over the battlefield and they're kind of repurposing all the fallen Skitarii and any other Adeptus Mechanicus, units of war. And Brigadier General's like, okay, Archmagos, this is extremely weird. What are you doing with the corpses of the fallen? He's like, we're going to repurpose them and send them back out to combat, which is extremely horrifying to the Brigadier General. So keep in mind, this is someone on the same side, both worship the same being, and the lack of knowledge between the two and their customs is just so crazy, because Brigadier General kind of had this thing going on, little monologue beforehand, telling Archmagos what he does with the fallen, because they're Elysian and they put the coins over their eyes, and they have their own traditions and they're burned at a pyre. And Archmagos is like, well, this is extremely ineffective, bro. Why don't you just simply repackage them? And then Brigadier General is horrified. He's like, what the fuck did you just say? And it goes into this whole thing. But again, think about how insanely creepy and horrific that is to see someone on your side, this elusive, other faction and simile that is a big portion of how you receive technology from, for the Imperium in general, this elusive group who just comes to aid you because they have their own reasons to do so. They don't elaborate, they don't explain why they're there, just that they have a shared common interest. And they start taking their dead and repackaging them and sending them out, which is just insanely creepy and horrific in its own little grim, dark way, right? Well, flash forward to another further battle. Marduk, one of the protagonists of this book, is sort of going on his own shenanigans, trying to appease the Dark Apostle. And, there's normal chaos tomfoolery going about. The souls of the damned be screeching. What else is new? But again, the book goes into this really great lengths to detail how the Skitarii and the Praetorians march in such a unified way that it's almost preternaturally, perfect. Like it is so mechanicalized that it's each calculation and each march and each square foot of land being used by the Praetorians and the Scutari is perfectly mapped out and calculated. Oh, there's nothing creepy about that, Connor. That's their whole thing. It's mechanical. It's their logic. And sure, totally understand that, except for the fact that they are described as marching towards their death and watching each other get eviscerated and cleaved in half, and they just keep marching and marching and marching, and they literally do in fact walk to their death, and it's insane. It is just so insane. They also shoot upon friendlies, but they didn't know they were friendlies. That's a whole different thing we're not going to get into, but that was pretty brutal. But just the cold logic of the Mechanicus, and that's their whole thing, but just reading it from a perspective that's not loyalist, you can really just see how I don't know what word I would use, like single-minded that the Cult Mechanicus are. Oh, here's your mission, achieve said mission by any means necessary. They had an Imperator, I don't know if I'm saying it right, but this giant Titan get demolished, and Archmagos is upset, but then he's like, oh, this is illogical, and shuts off that part of his brain. So it's just insane to me, and just borderline like unexplainable to me how the Cult Mechanicus aren't ranking up there in like the fear factor for other factions. Like I would even go as far as to say there should be a little horror short story and or novel on the Mechanicus. I feel like that's super untapped potential, just to have, like, let's say the Tau, or who would you, not even the Tau, you could honestly do Chaos, like insurgents or something, like cultists, and they get captured, and their whole goal is to maybe get an STC or just kill an Archmagos, something like that, right? But then you just see the Scutari and the Praetorians and all these different factions of the Mechanicus, and even the Archmagos. You see this dude with tubes sticking out of his mouth. His eyes aren't even functional at this rate. They're just kind of fleshy bits that want to be eviscerated, and this guy's talking to you, but not with his mouth. There's a thing in his throat that opens and closes, and it's horrific. Like, what else can I say? They're extremely creepy and weird, but I don't know. I feel like, listen, you guys let me know. I know, Mechanicus are jobbers and all this nonsense, but I didn't want to focus on that because I feel like I've already made a video on that. But the Mechanicus are really cool, and I felt like this is one of the more underrated parts of the faction that I don't think anyone talks about. Sure, they make it shit on in a lot of the books, where basically if somebody needs to get propped up and they don't want to use Eldars or Night Lords or whatever, they're going to put in the Mechanicus, and the Mechanicus are going to get bodied even in their own books. I know, memes or whatever, but it's also nice to look at a faction and just be like, look at their highlights and also find some stuff that is underutilized. And I think the mystery / horror aspect of the Mechanicus can really be emphasized if the right author gets their hands on it. But what do I know? Other than that, guys, that's pretty much it. Let me know your thoughts on Cult Mechanicus. If you think they're creepy, or you think I don't know, you're into toasters and you're like, Connor, you're wrong. The Cult Mechanicus aren't creepy. They're super normal, and the flesh is weak, dude. What do I know? Anyway, guys, thanks for watching. I am out of here.